Well, there has been mixed reaction to new food labelling laws that have been proposed by the Department of Health. Experts from law firm Webber Wentzel say the new food labelling laws may do more harm than good. The Health Department gazetted the draft regulations relating to the labelling and advertising of foodstuffs earlier this year and has made the document available for public comment until the 21st of July. The draft regulations introduce a mandatory black and white warning label system for pre-packaged foods. The Healthy Living Alliance, it's a South African coalition of civil society organizations, says that it is pleased with the decision to publish the draft legislation. The talk about the implications of the draft regulations have been doing the rounds, but let's take it a bit further. And we're joined by Bernadette Versfeld, a partner at Webber Wentzel, and Nzama Mbalati, a programs director at Heala. It is so good to have both of you. Welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bernadette, let me begin with you because, although on the surface it looks like a great idea because, it's when things are loaded with sugars and fats and, they're not there with a warning sign, it's devastating on people's health. But you are saying that the new food labelling laws that the Department of Health want to introduce may do more harm than good. Perhaps we can start off with an explanation from you as to why.
Absolutely. So, Leanne, yes, there was a recent roundtable discussion, and I think that all the stakeholders, everybody involved, members of the foodstuffs, marketing and advertising industries, we all see the need for there to be these regulations, and we do believe that they are important to have. However, these regulations go a little bit too far in that it requires, as you've said, these front of pack labeling to be placed on food and beverage that contain added sugar, added fats that exceed the nutrient cutoff values, added sodium. It means that the logos need to be prominently visible when displayed to the consumer. In addition to those warning labels, though, there are also requirements that those front of pack labeling may not contain celebrities, no sports stars, so all the celebrity endorsements, the sports star endorsements, any competitions that appeal to children, any advertisements that appeal to positive family values may also not appear on packaging. So what that means is that the food producers are going to have to embark on a massive rebranding exercise. Now, the strategy of brand owners worldwide is to advertise and package products in a way that attracts consumers. And celebrity endorsements, images of sports stars, cartoon characters, those are the way in which those food packaging companies do it. What this means is they're not only going to have to rebrand, redo their packaging, they're also going to have to embark, as I say, on the rebranding exercise, which means that trademark portfolios are going to need to be revised, new trademark applications are going to be filed, media and digital advertisements are going to have to be pulled. That is at a massive cost. And it comes at a time when brand owners are already confronted with a challenging economy. The JSE's Food Producers Index is down by 16% with rising costs of production and distribution costs, which are, of course, exacerbated by our load shedding. We also, the only place that those costs are going to be, they're going to be pushed onto the consumer. And consumers, we already know, are struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So that is really the concern, the effects that these regulations are going to have on our economy.
All right. And I'm going to quiz you a little bit on that because, there are a couple of questions that come to my mind with some of the things that you've been saying. But I want to bring Nzama in and just ask, from Heala's point of view, those regulations, what are your views on them? What is your standpoint on what government is proposing?
Thank you, Leanne. The regulation is a public health policy intervention, and as Healthy Living Alliance, in principle, we welcome the regulation, and we do believe that the regulation could still be strengthened in a way. The regulation is not posing any threat to any business. The regulation is aiming at empowering South Africans to know what they are eating, because the current model, the nutrient model that is in food, food is still labeled today. It's not like food is not labeled. I think we have to point that out. But it's labeled in a way that if you are a consumer, right, who's concerned about or want to make a choice about the food, you're eating the food that you do not know, because the current model is actually using a very technical jargon that many consumers may not understand. So me and you, since we have not studied nutrition or we're not dietitians, will not understand. And I think it's important that in a country where over 20 million people are either obese or overweight, 8 women in 10 are obese or overweight, and 5 men in 10 are overweight or obese, that South Africa speeds up, really. This regulation has been long overdue. And we understand that, the law firm is acting could be acting on the interest of the client.
Yeah.
But this is a public health intervention that government needs to introduce speedily. And I think if the interest of the industry is to sit down with government, should be like to say, what are the things that, government has to look out for? And the public comment process has been open for everyone to do comments. So what we have not been doing, which I think is a kind like disappointing from the industry, we have not been pointing fingers. We have been silently making public comments. So this has a risk of actually pressing a panic button to consumers, pressing a panic button to the country, because someone who has been given an opportunity to make public comments is making public comment, but is coming in public and say, this possesses this risk in the public domain, when the opportunity is open for actually, and this is a tactic of the industry to deny, to delay public health policies. Now you see the issue of electricity is being pointed out. So using the current socio-economic environment to deny, to delay public health policies. So it's not new. Tobacco is doing it. Alcohol has been doing it. Food industry has been doing it.
Yeah. All right. So that's two completely differing standpoints, which is nice and interesting. And Bernadette, let me come back to you, because obviously, a lot of what we've heard here from Nzama is true. I mean, a lot of it is that, some South Africans, and I think probably the majority of South Africans, do have trouble reading traditional nutrition labels. I mean, there's all those things at the back that are in the ingredient you're about to eat, from energy and protein and carbs and fats and fiber and the E's and the this and the that. And we don't really know what we're putting in our body and whether it is or good for us or not, and that is the reality. So as much as we do worry for the producer's point of view, it's the health of South Africans, I think, that it's the key here. I mean, I'm just leading some statistics of the obesity rate, and that's just one thing that is a repercussion of this in children. So one of the surveys that came out, and this was from a few years ago, is basically showing that 13% of South African children under 5 are overweight or obese, 16% 5 to 9-year-olds are obese, 22% in 10 to 14-year-olds, and 18% in children 15 to 17. And this is a while ago. I'm sure it's probably been updated. It's a worrying trend, and the health of children is a big thing.
Yeah, Leanne, if I can mention 2 things on that. And I totally agree. We have a problem with obesity. We have a problem with diabetes. We have a problem with hypertension in this country. So as I said at the beginning, these are definitely things that need to be addressed. And it's just the way in which we are intending to address it is going to cause damage to companies that have spent decades building their brands. But the 2 things I want to mention is of concern to me is of concern to us is that national government has never conducted a dietary intake study to determine the factors that are actually contributing to the country's obesity rate. Will the labels actually change consumer behavior? Is it going to reduce sugar consumption and decrease the health problems such as obesity? Is the fact that it's going to incur significant costs to manufacturers, are we guaranteed that that significant cost is going to achieve the outcome that we want? If you have a look at Chile, these regulations...
Can I ask you a question? Let me put... we've got like 4 minutes, so I'm going to quickly throw as many as I can at you. The cigarette labeling, obviously that came with the same conversation beforehand. Did it work, Bernadette? I mean, putting the labels on the cigarettes and the pictures or whatever, did it help deter people from smoking?
I haven't seen the statistics, but to my knowledge, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And the point I want to make is Chile has adopted very similar regulations to the ones that we are adopting now, and to address child obesity specifically, which is what you mentioned. And Chile's obesity rates, after implementing these regulations, have climbed from 51.2% in 2016 to 58% in 2022. So there's limited evidence about the impact of unhealthy food advertising on dietary behavior.
Yeah,
And I also wonder whether, if you think of COVID and how the government embarked on that massive education drive, everybody knew about COVID, everybody knew about the vaccination system. Why don't governments do their part and educate people from a very young age about sugar, about the effects of sugar, about the effects of intake of salt? And to my knowledge, a lot of people with hypertension and diabetes, they didn't know that sugar and salt intake was going to cause those diseases. So isn't the answer educating the public?
Yeah. So Nzama, I mean, these are tried and tested, and we've seen it happen in a couple of countries where they've brought in these warnings, and they don't necessarily work. That people, I mean, I remember at first seeing the packaging and the pictures on these cigarettes. Not that I'm a smoker, and I looked at it and it really scared me. And then eventually, you block it out. You actually don't even see it. You don't look at it because you want it. It doesn't matter, if it's good or bad for you. And you pretty much know it's bad for you when you open up a packet of crisps or have a whole thing of sweets. You know what you're doing to yourself. And, so what are your views on the fact that this packaging actually doesn't really work, and studies have proved that?
So I think it will be a bit unfair to compare tobacco to food, because there is no alternative of healthy tobacco, of a tobacco product. But when you look at food, for example, if you have unhealthy food, you'll have alternative of healthier food options, right? And we do know, and we do believe, because these warning labels have been implemented in other countries, and the issue of labels, getting people to know what they are eating, it's just one of the toolbox of the tools in our toolbox. What is important is that we are addressing the issue of equity here, Lian. Can people afford? Is food available that is healthy, right? So this intervention should be seen in combination. And I think the industry has been pushing for a health behavior intervention, right? To start with, the NCD strategy in South Africa doesn't have, it's not funded, right? It doesn't have funds to actually drive the epidemic of NCDs, to tackle the epidemic of NCDs. So it's important that when we're protecting people, or when we are looking at intervention that protect people, we don't look at that and that. We look at the holistic and the combination of things. What we're on the ground now. The literacy level on nutrition is appalling in communities, right? Yeah. People do not understand what they are eating currently. I mean, before I joined this campaign, I didn't see anything wrong with the food consumption that I have already. Some of the food products are very addictive. So even if you educate me, it will be so difficult for me to move and change from that kind of a behavior. So it's a multi-pronged approach that is important in addressing this. And we believe the mandatory labeling of food will raise high level of awareness without going to the individual, educating them one by one in terms of understanding what is in our food. Okay, so both of you, just already in news time. So just very quickly, Nzama, in terms of commenting, how long do people have to comment? When does it close? It's closing on the 21st of July. On the 20th of July. We are already on the ground. We've been in 8 provinces where we've been in 8 provinces to get people to make comments to this important regulation. All right, so get out there, comment if you feel strongly about it. Bernadette, my final question to you is, if something like this is implemented and very quickly, how many jobs can be lost due to just something like this being implemented?
There'll be huge job losses, Leanne. You just have to think of the sugar industry, for example. If these regulations do work, like Nzama and others want them to work, it's going to reduce revenue in the country's sugar industry. And if you think of Tongaat Hewlett, they were placed in business rescue. So if it's going to affect the sugar industry those kinds of companies they're going to be job losses.
All right, we've got to leave it there. My guests, thank you. I wish we had longer. Bernadette Versfeld from Webber Wentzel and Nzama Mbalati at Heala, talking to us about the implications of the new regulations, or the draft regulations, on labelling and advertising foods.